Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending the Argonaut Phase 2 Stormwater Project Public Meeting. Today is December 20th, 2022 at 6 p.m. I am Tammy Pickens, the Public Participation Specialist for the Department of Toxic Substance Control. Presentation materials are available at www.envirostore.dtsc.ca.gov Argonaut Mines. Next slide. By participating in this meeting, you understand that this meeting is being recorded. You may be muted for background noise. During the question and comment, we will focus on topics related to today's presentation. We will do our best to listen and address all comments and questions so that everyone can participate. Thank you for your understanding. Next slide. The purpose of this meeting is to provide information regarding the Argonaut Mine Phase 2 Stormwater Project, receive comments on the Feasibility Study / Remedial Action Plan, FS/RAP, and answer questions. The presentation materials are available at www.envirostore.dtsc.ca.gov Argonaut Mines. Media questions can be addressed to Russ Edmondson at the DTSC Office of Communication at russ.edmondson@dtsc.ca.gov. All this information has been sent to the chat. Next slide. Tonight's agenda includes opening remarks by myself, Tammy Pickens, Public Participation Specialist, an overview of cleanup process by Jawan Payne, the Unit Chief, an overview of the Remedial Action Plan for the Argonaut Mine Dam Phase 2 by Andy Rymanis, the Project Manager, the question and answers, Tammy Pickens, and then we'll have formal public comments. Next slide. The Department of Toxic Substance Control mission. DTSC's mission is to protect California's people, community, and environment from toxic substances, to enhance economic viable by restoring contaminated land, and to compel manufacturers to make safer consumer products. Next slide. I would like to introduce Jawan Payne to begin her presentation. Jawan.
Thank you, Tammy. Good evening, everyone. Next slide, please. My name is John Payne. I'm the Unit Chief of the National Priorities List Unit of the Cleanup Program of DTSC. And today I want to give you a very quick overview of the cleanup process of our program. And before I get started, I want to tell you very quick that we are right here in the middle during the draft Remedial Action Plan proposed sequence document and public meeting phase. And how did we get here? We started with the site discovery to see if there is a potential release of contaminants. And then we move forward with a preliminary endangerment assessment along with the community profile to decide if release exists and also determine in the preliminary phase if there is any potential risk to human health and the environment. We also, this phase, be conducting a baseline community survey to better understand potential community interest in the project. And then we move forward doing additional community assessment and the preparation of a public participation plan. In this phase, we will also be preparing fact sheets of the project. And once we have a better understanding of the potential site risks, we will move forward with remedial investigation to better characterize the extent of the contamination and its potential risks. And moving forward, we'll be conducting feasibility study to identify possible options to clean up the contamination. Moving from there, we'll select a remedy that will best meet our remedial action objective, and that selection will be documented in the draft remedial action plan, which is the document or the decision that we're talking today. Now, for Argonaut mine, we are combining the feasibility study with the remedial action plan, because this is phase 2 of the Argonaut Dam mining stormwater project. We have already completed the community survey, participation plan, and remedial investigation during phase 1 of the project, which was the retrofit of the Argonaut Dam. So for phase 2, it's a continuation of phase 1, and it makes sense for us to combine the feasibility study and the remedial action plan to document the selected alternative for this phase. Moving forward, once we receive comments from the public by the deadline, we will be addressing public comments and document the public comment in a responsive summary in the final remedial action plan. And after the wrap is after the wrap is finalized, we will go ahead and finalize the remedial design or the engineering design documents before we move forward with the construction project. Now, since this is also a national priorities list project or a Superfund project, US EPA remains to be the lead agency. So moving forward, site certification is something that's going to be happening quite a few years down the road. Eventually, site will be certified, and we're expecting some additional operation and maintenance items of the site. And this concludes my overview of the cleanup process. I would like to introduce Andy Reimanis, the project manager of Argonaut Mine, to give you an overview of the remedial action plan for phase 2.
Thank you, Juan. Evening, my name is Andy Reimanis. I'm the Hazardous Substances Engineer in the National Priorities List unit, and I'm the project manager for the Argonaut mine site. Next slide, please. As you may have noticed, at the site, there's been quite a bit of activity. If you've been near the site or live near the site, the US EPA is currently conducting a non-time critical removal action. This removal action is being conducted by the US EPA around different portions of the site. But one of the main features is they are constructing stormwater channels to direct water away from the contaminated mine tailings. The purpose of this is to prevent contamination of the stormwater. We don't want the stormwater to seep into the mine tailings and carry the contaminants downstream in the water that goes into the creek and into the lake downstream. DTSC is working in conjunction with US EPA on the stormwater management, the overall stormwater management for the site. Next slide, please. As Juan mentioned, we had 2 phases, and we're beginning what we're calling phase 2 of the stormwater drainage system upgrade. And that is the topic of tonight's meeting. But in phase 1, DTSC mitigated a dam failure, although after reducing the water storage behind the dam, the stormwater surge downstream will be higher. Based on that, phase 2 stormwater drainage system upgrade increases the pipe sizes to reduce the risk of downstream flooding in Jackson. This upgrade will expand the current capacity of the storm drains to meet the projected stormwater surge flow. Next slide, please. Remedial action objectives for this project are as follows: to prevent exposure to mine wastes by the public, to minimize air emissions of site contaminants, including arsenic, from mine waste in both the short and the long term, to minimize off-site transport of contaminants of concern in surface water and sediment, and to reduce risk posed by contact with contaminated soil at the former mine site and surrounding areas. Next slide, please. This is a Google Maps view of the project area. On the left-hand side, you can see a green circle. This is the area that phase 1 construction was completed. The dam was stabilized in the phase 1, reducing flood risk by reducing the risk of dam failure. In phase 2, the construction area is shown by the red circle. This is where we'll be installing the larger size stormwater pipe underneath Sutter Street, underneath the Highway 49, and into Jackson Creek, next to the Amador County Library. Next slide, please. Now I'll briefly talk about the remedy. The feasibility study and remedial action plan evaluated 3 alternatives for stormwater management as follows. Alternative 1 was to take no action. It was determined that this may result in flooding. Alternative 2 was to improve the downstream stormwater infrastructure by itself. This requires a much larger pipe, and by sending all of the water downstream, it is anticipated it may damage Jackson Creek. And then alternative 3 was an optimized stormwater inlet elevation and improving the downstream stormwater infrastructure, sort of a combined solution. DTSC currently proposes alternative 3, which is the optimized stormwater inlet elevation and improved downstream stormwater infrastructure. Next slide, please. To avoid stormwater infiltration of contaminated tailings, the upstream water storage is being reduced. This is what I discussed because we want to reduce the stormwater from taking the contaminants, arsenic, downstream in the stormwater. However, in the event of storms greater than 100 years, water will be retained above the main dam for a limited time. The inlet elevation and retaining wall will also reduce flooding risk. This solution will greatly reduce the risk of flooding and will also minimize the contamination of the stormwater. Next slide, please. This is the same photo as I showed before. On the left-hand side is the area where there's a reduced stormwater storage. So because we're not storing water there, that water is going downstream, and then we'll be installing the larger pipe downstream to accommodate the larger stormwater flow surge. Next slide, please. I want to address the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. DTSC completed an initial study and mitigated negative declaration for this project. The CEQA documents are also posted for public comment through January 10th, 2023, simultaneous with the feasibility study and RAP documents. DTSC is the responsible agency and will complete a notice of determination after approving the feasibility study and remedial action plan. Next slide, please. Community safety. For community safety, streets will be cleaned of debris on a daily basis. Air will be monitored during construction. Dust and traffic controls will be in place. Excavation will stop if the wind speeds exceed 20 miles per hour. Construction area will be fenced for public safety. Warning signage will be posted with DTSC contact information, and only clean fill and concrete will be brought to the site. Next slide, please.
We are now at the Q&A portion of this presentation. This slide provides an overview of the 3 ways you can ask a question or make a comment. The first one is auto Zoom using the raise hand feature, and you will be invited to unmute your auto when it's your turn. Number 2, phone auto, press *9 to join the phone queue. I will say the last 3 digits of your phone number when it's your turn. Press *6 to unmute your line. Number 3, text only. Use the Q&A feature to have your questions read. We can now start receiving questions. Okay, since we don't have any questions or comments on this presentation, we would have taken a 5-minute break, but we're going to go ahead and go into the formal comment process. Next slide. The public comment period began December 2nd, 2022 and ends January 10th, 2023. Comments may also be submitted to Andy Ramirez, the project manager at the Department of Toxic Substance Control, 8800 Cal Center Drive, Sacramento, California, 95826, or sent by email to andrew.ramirez@dtsc.ca.gov. Next slide. We are now at the comment portion of this presentation. This is the portion where we would take your comments without responding. You will receive a written response in a document called a response to comment. This slide also provides an overview of the 3 ways you may make a comment. 1 is Zoom Auto. Use the raise hand feature, and you will be invited to unmute your auto when it's your turn. Phone auto, press *9 to join the phone queue. I will say the last 3 digits of your phone number when it's your turn. Press *6 to unmute your line. Or text only, use the Q&A feature, have your question read. Formal comments will be answered in a response to comment letter accompanying the wrap approval. Do we have any questions or comments? None so far. Okay, Andy. Next slide. Andrew, if you're comfortable, and Jawan, or if you both are comfortable, we'll go ahead and conclude the meeting. Are you comfortable with concluding?
Yes.
Okay, so I want to say thank you on the behalf of DTSC for joining us for tonight's meeting.